dared to have treated her like that if she had been a man. But she would see that her daughter got her rights. She wouldn't be fooled. If they didn't pay her to the last farthing, she would make Dublin ring. Of course, she was sorry for the sake of the artistes, but what else could she do? She appealed to the second tenor, who said he thought she had not been well treated. Then she appealed to Miss Healy. Miss Healy wanted to join the other group, but she did not like to do so because she was a great friend of Kathleen's, and the Kearneys had often invited her to their house. As soon as the first part was ended, Mr. Fitzpatrick and Mr. Holohan went over to Mrs. Kearney and told her that the other 4 guineas would be paid after the committee meeting on the following Tuesday, and that, in case her daughter did not play for the second part, the committee would consider the contract broken and would pay nothing.
I haven't seen any committee,
said Mrs. Kearney angrily.
My daughter has her contract. She will get £4.8 into her hand, or a foot she won't put on that platform.
I'm surprised at you, Mrs. Kearney,
said Mr. Holohan.
I never thought you would treat us this way.
And what way did you treat me?
asked Mrs. Kearney. Her face was inundated with an angry colour, and she looked as if she would attack someone with her hands.
I'm asking for my rights,
she said.
You might have some sense of decency,
said Mr. Holohan.
Might I indeed? And when I ask when my daughter is going to be paid, I can't get a civil answer.
She tossed her head and assumed a haughty voice.
You must speak to the secretary. It's not my business. I'm a great fellow, folded in Lido.
I thought you were a lady,
said Mr. Holohan, walking away from her abruptly. After that, Mrs. Kearney's conduct was condemned on all hands. Everyone approved of what the committee had done. She stood at the door, haggard with rage, arguing with her husband and daughter, gesticulating with them. She waited until it was time for the second part to begin, in the hope that the secretaries would approach her. But Miss Healy had kindly consented to play 1 or 2 accompaniments. Mrs. Kearney had to stand aside to allow the baritone and his accompanist to pass up to the platform. She stood still for an instant, like an angry stone image, and when the first notes of the song struck her ear, she caught up her daughter's cloak and said to her husband,
"Get a cab."
He went out at once. Mrs. Kearney wrapped the cloak round her daughter and followed him. As she passed through the doorway, she stopped and glared into Mr. Holohan's face.
"I'm not done with you yet,"
she said.
"But I'm done with you,"
said Mr. Holohan. Kathleen followed her mother meekly. Mr. Holohan began to pace up and down the room in order to cool himself, for he felt his skin on fire.
"That's a nice lady,"
he said.
"Oh, she's a nice lady."
You did the proper